Hello, and welcome to another edition of Health Matters, brought to you by WCCA TV and the Worcester District Medical Society. I'm Dr. Bruce Karlin, your host tonight, and it's my great pleasure to welcome Dr. Michael F, our Chancellor of our world-famous University of Massachusetts. Welcome aboard.
Dr. Karlin, always good to be with you. Thanks for having me back.
This is a semi-annual event, which is one of my favorite events of the year because it gets to show off our fabulous medical school. As I was talking to you before, I was in the third class to go through, and we held our classes in that little corner former tobacco warehouse.
Shaw Building?
Well, we called it the Pshaw Building. It was not much, but that was the entire medical school. There were 24 in my class, 24 in the class ahead of me, and 16 in the first graduating class.
Yeah. You know, it's amazing that a short 50 years ago, that property was a farm and a big field, and that folks had a vision to create a medical school there, and look what we've become. I mean, it's just
world
absolutely
famous.
Extraordinary.
We were pioneers at the time. You asked me about how it felt to be in that first class, or the third class, and I said it was fabulous. We paid practically no tuition for those first years while they were trying to put together what it was that was going to be the medical school. But we all had a mission to be involved with community health and to be involved with primary care. And one of the reasons that the raison d'etre at the time was so that we could provide primary care physicians for Massachusetts. And here I am still doing that.
That's amazing. And you know, we're grateful to all of those who have graduated from the medical school who continue to fulfill that founding mission that we had. Even today, over half of our graduates each year go into primary care residencies, and roughly 60% of our graduates are practicing primary care, and as you know, about 80% of them are practicing in Massachusetts. So, and there's very few communities in the Commonwealth that don't have a UMass medical school presence in one way or another, whether it's a graduate practicing there, one of our entities participating in the life and health of the community, or a student coming from the community. So it's a pretty special, special mission.
I sat down here. I was originally a Boston kind of guy, and I came to medical school here, and I had never left. I love this place.
Yeah, it's wonderful. It's really a wonderful place.
And it's so, when I was there was hardly the research facility that's there now. And people say, you went to UMass? And I said, well, it wasn't quite the same UMass.
Well, look what we've become. You know, we maintain our position as one of the leaders in primary care medical education in the nation. In addition to that, we now have a graduate school of nursing and a graduate school of biomedical sciences. But we're talking about the medical school tonight, so we're one of the leaders. We're ranked always in the top decile of primary care institutions. And today, we're just under $300 million in research, about 165 or 70 million of that coming from the NIH, which puts us in the top dozen or so public medical schools, and at, I believe the position is 32 in the country overall. And an interesting fact is that we have more NIH research at the medical school than 20 entire states. This is what we've become. And there are so many areas of outstanding focus. As you know, when Craig Mello won the Nobel Prize in 2006, shortly thereafter, the RNA Therapeutics Institute was created. And just last year, so if you think of that discovery in 94, the prize in 06, and then just last year, in 2018, the first drug that actually employs RNA interference as a technology was put onto the market. Today, if you look at our dean Terry Flott and Guangping Gao and many other faculty members in our gene therapy area, they've now gotten to the point where they can create what's called a vector. Just think of an envelope, if you will. We can discern now, there are 7,000 or so rare diseases. We know many of the gene defects in those diseases, and we're now capable of creating a vector or an envelope, putting correct genetic material into that vector, deliver that vector to the patient. The vector's smart enough to get into the cell, and when it gets in there, it opens up, and the next time the cell replicates, it replicates with correct genetic material. Think of the ability into the future now to cure these rare diseases. And people are coming from all over the world who have these challenges, are coming from all over the world to see our scientists and clinicians. And, you know, I think one of the things we've become quite famous for is sort of being the ALS place. And, you know, with Dr. Robert Brown, who's an outstanding clinician, one of the foremost researchers of ALS in the country. And, you know, most people don't realize it, but only about 5% of patients with ALS have that as sort of a familial condition. 95% of that is sporadic. So no one of us knows who might be next. So it's very important for us to maintain this important research presence.
Well, what I find interesting about this whole discussion is you're getting all excited about the people that are doing this work. And what I'm excited about was thinking back to the Pasha building and then thinking about what you personally have done. I'm in awe of how you've brought us forward and created the space where all this, where people want to come together to do this kind of research.
Well, it's very kind of you to say that, but when you lead an institution, I'm very fortunate to be at a place that has great people. And if you have great people, you know, unless you really mess it up, you're going to look pretty good. All right, so we have great people, but we also have a great commitment. And the commitment is to the social fabric of our community, to the fabric of the Commonwealth, and indeed the fabric of the world. And we've just come through our third strategic planning process, thinking about how we're going to fulfill that mission. If you look at our education mission, in medicine, nursing, and in graduate studies in science, it's our desire to respond to the workforce needs. And every day you read about the workforce needs in STEM areas, science, technology, and math, and engineering, and our ability now to educate the future workforce of the Commonwealth is very important. So I said about a little more than half of our students go into primary care, so we've maintained fidelity to that mission. As we think of educating doctors into the future, you and I went to a medical school that was taught in one way, you know, largely big lectures and an anatomy lab where, you know, we stood around a donor. Today, our learners come with, you know, they're, if you will, technology enabled. They have the ability to think and learn in many different ways with technological advancements, et cetera. And so we're thinking now about how do we become the medical school of tomorrow. When you think of our research and both the basic science research, if you will, science for the joy of science, as opposed to a translational science, which takes a basic science discovery and moves that to have an impact in the, from the bench to the bedside, and then from the bedside to actually impact healthcare in the community. If you think of that translational imperative that exists to take these great discoveries and turn them into biologics or devices that will help patients, we are at the forefront of that discovery. And we're also to the point now with our research enterprise having grown to where it is that it's time for another new building. And we presented last week to the UMass board our need for another building. If you think about our community impact and commitment, we have an enormous impact thanks to many people who are generous in the community. We work with pipeline programs to help students in our junior highs and high schools, indeed even into our elementary schools, to think about, not to think about science as a hope, but to think about it as an expectation. And to come to science, and we try early on to give them the wherewithal and the tutoring and you know, good lunch and dinner in the evening. And we support the teachers in the schools so that we can actually make science, incredibly exciting. Just like it is to be the quarterback, it'd be great to be a terrific scientist.
Be a good scientist.
And there's a particular group of folks in our community that we've just made an amazing commitment to, and that is to our veterans. If you're willing to go into battle for the nation has made a promise to you that it will forever take care of your healthcare need. And in our central Massachusetts area, we were not doing very well in that area because there's great distance. There's sort of rules from the Veterans Administration about how close you have to be. And while in Oklahoma, 40 miles an hour may not seem too far away, in Massachusetts, 40 miles an hour is a long way. So we've just agreed to build a Veterans Outpatient Center on the campus that will now help us to attract veterans from the central part of the Commonwealth, to see veteran clinicians, but to work where our medical students and house officers, our learners, are part of the care experience. And Bruce, our view is that if a learner becomes committed to this patient population while they're in school or in their residency program, there's a much greater likelihood that they'll desire to take care of these patients once they're into practice.
And they'll see how seasoned people take care of these folks.
Well, both of us know how great it is to look after the veterans population, right? It's a part of the best experience we've ever had.
Well, some great stories on the veterans
great stories
hospitals.
on both sides, right?
Yeah, right.
And so now for us, there's just palpable enthusiasm on the campus for creating this new facility now, so there'll be an absolute beautiful place where veterans who have made this great commitment to our country can come and be looked after.
But this is getting to my point about the leadership from UMass, creating the space that draws the good people in to do the work and then, just uplifts the community.
Well, we're fortunate to be in a position, as part of a great university system with very, very well-honed management, with outstanding opportunities of our sciences. All of these things have come together now to put the medical school in a position where it can actually invest in its future. And it's so exciting. We're in the midst of a genetic revolution. And it's so exciting for our scientists now to know that, in our lifetimes, we're going to be able to cure these diseases. The first gene therapies are now being delivered to patients, particularly in the eye. It is one of the first areas. But when we have these very rare diseases, our dean has been involved in the care of patients with Tay-Sachs disease, and has now introduced gene into a few patients here. Bob Brown has introduced genetic material into patients with ALS, and we're considering, we have a patient with Canavan disease, a very rare neurologic disorder, but the child is extraordinarily better having done this. And now these are research experiences. Think to the future when we know that in years' time, we're going to be in a position where we'll actually be able to cure these genetic diseases. Now, come back to the point about changing the education. We also know that, in the future, and if you think about it for a minute, in the future, when someone goes like this with their phone, we're going to know immediately what their pulse is, what their temperature is, what their heart rate is. We may even know what their blood sugar is because we can assess the sweat.
You know what's happening?
You know it's off. You told me to put it off. But the ability, and now you can actually, if you have atrial fibrillation, we have clinicians who can
call you and tell you that you're having it.
We can put an app on your phone, and just by taking the phone into your two hands, we can get a tracing, and it can go immediately to your medical record, and our docs will know that your rhythm is not normal.
We just had a very interesting grand rounds from Dr. Martin from talking about what was happening on the Fitbits, where they've been able to follow a fib and find out what its relationship actually is to stroke. And that was just one use of it, but that's fascinating. One of the things that I think about is when you say your commitment to education. I think that the very third hire for UMass, the first clinical hire, was Dr. Hugh Fulmer, who was the founder of the community medicine department. And unlike any of our friends that were in other medical schools, Hugh and his group had us already farmed out to various community medical experiences in our first year. All the other guys were doing, they're stuck to the biochemistry,
one of the
and
things
Hugh
that,
had that going
one of the things
immediately.
that's so special about the medical school is the places throughout the Commonwealth where we have an impact. And our clinical affiliates now span from Cape Cod, the Cape Cod healthcare system, all the way to the Berkshires. And some may not know, but 3 years ago, we began a special relationship with Bay State. And now there's a separate program. Students actually can apply to UMass Medical School twice. They can apply, we'll call it UMass Regular, or we can call it UMass Perch, which is the program in urban and rural community health. And it's a population-based program based at Bay State Medical Center in Springfield, where the medical students admitted to that program do essentially the first 2 years in Worcester, but then will do their clinical years in Springfield. And it is an incredible program. The students, to your precise point, early on in their first year, they've been visiting prisons to see the challenges with prison health care. They've been visiting those who don't have English as a first language in volunteer ways to look at what it's like to care for that patient population. They've actually been given food stamps and sent to the store to see what they could buy, to understand what some of the nutritional challenges will be. And if you think of healthcare disparities and inequity as it exists in our country, and you look at the practitioner of the future, the fact that our students, imbued with Hugh Fulmer's past, or Dr. Suter's past, the first dean of the school, if you think of these giants who were here with incredible vision, and I often imagine what it would be like to be able to stand next to them today to think of Brownie Wheeler or Jim Dallin or John Howe, these incredible people, and to stand next to them in the field and say, just like the movie, say, well, okay, if this was a field of dreams, look at what we've become. Yeah. And now add 2 more buildings onto the campus where we will, in 21, we'll open the VA, in 23, we'll open the new research building. And while people may drive by the campus and say, boy, what an incredible place that is, they also know that we're in Barry and we're in the Berkshires and we're in the small practices of Cape Cod and Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket, and that's where our learners come from, and that's where they want to return to.
I was just thinking, you brought up Brownie Wheeler. Of course, he was our president of the District Medical Society a few years back.
A few years.
But Brownie was just a terrific person. One of the things that he did when he came to Worcester, he was hired by the by the hospital, UMass Hospital, to be the first chief of surgery. And rather than set up shop at UMass, he went over to St. V's, said, look, I'm going to have our program stationed at St. V's. And it was, it said, we're not here to displace you. We're here to work with you. Right. It was
well, to this day, UMass Memorial and St. Vincent's are critical affiliates to our institution. They're critical. They do the lion's share of the teaching. The faculty, the lion's share of the faculty in the clinical areas is housed in those 2 institutions. Bay State obviously will be a much bigger complement to us into the future. But if you think of Art Pappas, if you think of he did the first surgery at the hospital on a child with an orthopedic problem. If you think back to these giants, I just wonder what they would think to say, look what we've become today. Yeah. Look at, there's a Nobel Prize there. There's a Breakthrough Prize. There's 6 or 7 Howard Hughes investigators. There's, Presidential Early Career Award winners. There's Keck Fellows. These are all accolades given to the most incredible scientists that exist in the world. And we have, just like yourself, these incredibly committed alumni and alumnae who are throughout the Commonwealth and indeed the world, looking after patients with primary care needs all the way up to the most sophisticated illnesses that exist anywhere. And isn't that really special that this is happening right in Worcester, Massachusetts, right at UMass Medical School?
So do you want to, I think we've been a little bit off script here. So do you think we could talk about the research building that is coming along.
The research building is going to, what we've endeavored is to create a structure that will bring together the folks who are working on these rare diseases, particularly those diseases that we know have genetic defects, bring those folks in, so our gene therapy folks from our Jorge Gene Therapy, to bring those together with the folks that are doing the ALS work in Huntington disease, so in neuroscience, neurobiology, and this department called molecular medicine, where some of the most groundbreaking research has been done. It's actually in the Biotech 2 building, which is across the street from the medical school. We're going to bring all of those folks now into the new structure, and that will be on floors 4 through 9. And in the first 3 floors, much like our Sherman Center, we'll have the educational complement. So we'll have the new classroom of the future. We'll have learning spaces. We'll have additional learning communities. All of our students are mentored in small groups called learning communities. We'll create new spaces for them. And this will be right on the green on the campus between the Sherman Center and the Lazar building. So it really is going to be a tremendous attribute.
Well, you bring up something else that, excuse me, many people may not be aware of, but we pioneered the surrogate patients.
Yes. Well, we have an outstanding. It's sort of you think of it. It's what we call a standardized patient program. It's patient actors who actually embody a disease, and when we learned how to resuscitate a patient or to examine a patient, we did it on a patient. Now it's all done with these standardized patients, a much better way, right? So we learn how to talk to patients and interrogate, and to interrogate their conditions and to learn exactly what it is bothering them. And the patients, these standardized patients become tremendous advocates for our students because they understand exactly what it is, to learn to become a doctor. And our students are much better prepared than when they actually get into the clinical setting.
It also employs some actors that don't have jobs otherwise.
Well, it's a
my
good
daughter
program.
having been one.
It's a good program all the way around.
But they also, this was some years back that you started all this, and it's just taken off through the rest of the country since then.
It has.
And it started here at UMass. But again, that's that commitment to teaching the clinician to be out in the field, which I think has been one of the things that, as a UMass grad, I always say, hey, that's why I'm so good at it.
Yeah, well, what we've been thinking about is if you're going to be a leading edge medical school, so a medical school that in 2025, which is the horizon we've been planning about, we're going to be a leading edge medical school. We know we need to continue to work on our curriculum and make it most attractive to our students. We need to create the spaces so that learning can go on well. We need to have additional space so we can continue to grow our research enterprise to take advantage of the great intellect that exists there today, and to work very closely in a collaborative and thoughtful culture so that we can actually change the course of history of disease and cure some of these genetic diseases. We need to continue to embrace the social compact that is our commitment to community. And we have to do so in a very efficient and effective manner. And those are the tenets of our new strategic plan. Buildings will come, the new research building and the VA building. The new affiliates will be full of students into the future. We'll hopefully respond to the workforce needs of the Commonwealth and beyond, because we know that no matter how many students we educate, we're not going to be fulfilling the need that exists. We know that every model is higher than the number of students that exist. And we must do a much better job in educating clinicians, scientists, who have the faces of the patients they're going to be looking after. So our commitment to diversity and inclusion is really great. And we've got to work on this issue that where you wake up, in other words, your zip code, in many instances, is more important than your genetic code. And there are parts of our city and in Boston where when you wake up, if you wake up in these certain zip codes, your lifespan could be as much as 20 years less than the lifespan just waking up in a more affluent part of a community. And we have incredibly committed investigators and clinicians who want to do everything they can to help to resolve those issues.
Well, this has been an amazing tour, and I'm hoping that we can do this again. I'm going to slip in a sly little last question.
Let's have it.
What are we doing on the opiate crisis at
UMass.
UMass?
We've been at the forefront of education. We have now educated nearly 2,000 learners in the safe and effective care of patients who have opioid addiction. When the governor brought together a task force to look at the issue of opioid abuse, it was suggested that the medical schools should come together, create a program. The 4 medical schools in Massachusetts did that. We were the first to implement the program. All of our learners now come through. We have standardized patients. We have protocols that they go through. They learn how to use Narcan. They learn how to interact with the special patient population. And they're much better prepared now when they get into practice to serve this patient population. I'm quite proud of the program. Over 2,000 learners have now gone through.
That's unbelievable. Well, believe it or not, we've talked for pretty much the whole time. It is my honor and privilege to again thank you, Dr. Michael Collins, the Chancellor of the University, of the medical school, and thank you for the work that you've done all along, and just again, this has been great, and come back again next year and tell us what else is happening.
It's always a privilege to be with you. Thank you very much, Bruce.
This is Dr. Bruce Karlin for WCCA TV and the Worcester District Medical Society, wishing you good health, and we'll see you next time. I think we got a lot of